Welcome to HumBot, your podcast where we talk about application of AI agents in business environments. You'll hear from professionals who are builders, buyers, users, and thought leaders adopting AI agents at scale in their businesses. Today, we will cover specifically the application of AI agents in enterprise environments and what does it mean in terms of organizational design, incentivization, and change management. To share more on this topic, I have the inimitable Craig Suckling with me today. Craig, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Sanjeev. That's very kind of you. It's great to be here with you, and I look forward to a very good conversation.
Just for context for our listeners, maybe just a short introduction from you.
Yeah, sure thing. So my current role is leading AI across Europe for Capgemini. But I have a varied experience set in data and AI over the last 25 years. I've been a chief data officer in both the public and private sector. I've worked in big tech, helping to really scale data and AI solutions on cloud. I've worked as a startup founder in my time as well. So I've got different degrees of perspective on data and AI, and I've rode the train of AI for the last 15 years as we've really seen it accelerate and start to advance and really become something that's going to have really dynamic and consequential impacts to so many industries now as we get into it more. So look forward to bringing some of the experience, some of my stories, some of my lessons learned and the pitfalls that I have fallen into in the past to make sure that we can, think about how we navigate the future here as well.
Before we start off, I always like to ask everyone joining us on their view of what are AI agents, because there are so many definitions doing rounds. So how do you just define it for the listeners?
Yeah, and you're dead right to ask this because, I speak to so many businesses and there is a lot of confusion around what is agentic AI, what does it actually look like and stand for? And the way I think about it is across three key dimensions. The first is that this is, something that has real agency. So it has the ability to take and leverage the power of machine learning, AI, large language models, GPTs, and to really utilize those with reasoning, with planning, to be able to bring together more structured sets to execute on activities, to have memory so it can learn and self-improve. So there's real agency in how it utilizes the intelligence that comes from GPTs, from foundation models, right, to be able to really drive really good outcomes. But agency alone is not enough. It's also got autonomy. And so it is able to not only sense and understand its environment, ingest data to understand how to act and plan, but to also then be able to take action by using tools, by being able to collaborate with other agents, by being able to interface with applications, with humans, and with data. So agency and autonomy are two key attributes when I think about agentic AI. And the third is authority. It has the ability, if given and granted, and we'll get into this a little bit, by humans or others, to have access to certain applications, to adhere to certain goal sets, operating within particular guardrails that you might set up. So for me, those are three key things: agency, authority, autonomy, that come together to help to create essentially, which is the next wave of what we're seeing in AI. The ability to not only take and utilize intelligence, but to be able to integrate that in an autonomous way to act across our business processes, our organizations, our societies.
Agency, autonomy, and authority summarizes it really well. So far, in terms of the definitions, what I have heard is more of the technical side of it, which is usually in the simplest form, AI agents at a technical level are doing a perception task, which you touched on, then a reasoning task, which you touched on, and an action task. And maybe just one or two examples of AI agents that you're seeing in action.
Yeah, sure. And I think, you touched on this a little bit or alluded to it a little bit. What we're seeing here is that the change effort here is more than technical. It is very much around how you organizationally integrate these into your teams and into your business processes. And if you think about the examples here, I can touch on two that are different but that build on each other. The first is integrating an agent into a particular functional unit of an organization. So let's choose marketing, for example. having a copilot marketing agent that can allow for you to plan campaigns, to be able to identify segments of your customer base if you're a retailer, let's say, and to be able to then auto-execute on a campaign into the market, whether it be on web or over a mobile phone app, and evaluate then the take-up of a particular offer. So you can have an agent that can be a part of your marketing team that allows for you to augment the work of planning, optimizing for a particular marketing campaign, thinking about the best content and the best way to organize how you then drive out that campaign, and helping to evaluate. So it can go across all of those activities, augmenting different people in the team, helping them to think about this more robustly. So that's one example of a function level agent. You can think of it more broadly as well as having a multi-agent process level kind of setup, let's say. And so if we build on the example of marketing, that's great. You have someone helping to augment that team. But there are teams that are adjacent to this as well. You have teams that are focused on sensing customer demand, understanding sentiment in the market of what's happening. We'll continue with the retail example. So you might have an agent that helps with customer demand sensing and understanding sentiment. You might have another agent that's focusing on the price of my product and what are the right price optimization techniques we should take. And these three could come together. When you're formulating your marketing campaigns, it looks at what demand are we sensing in the market and how do we use that to create really personalized campaigns? And how do we optimally price for that based on the price optimization from the price agent? So these agents will come together to drive a broader, better marketing return on investment in this example. And this is the benefit, I think, of having multi-agent systems in an enterprise is, yes, they can benefit within a particular function, but the wider benefit that's going to be exponential is the ability to sequence across a value chain and start to unlock value where traditional organizations might have silos or might be highly manual in engaging across teams. And we'll see this concert and this coordination effort start to fall away and start to become a lot more streamlined with agents.
If I were to run my own business at some point, which would be a large business, and agentic AI were to be of interest, I probably won't do it for the first point use case, even if it sounds exciting.
Right.
Because I need to understand what does it mean in the future? Are there more agents doing other things that need to be connected and managed in order to derive value across the business as opposed to that one single point function?
100%. And I think this is the trajectory is, single agents are great, but multi-agent ecosystems is where the real value is unlocked. And if we extrapolate what I was talking about just now around connecting the dots between pricing, demand sensing, and marketing, we're very much looking at the front-end customer experience, revenue-generating side of the business. You extrapolate that further. And if you have agents that are also then, looking at where do you procure goods, how do you fulfill demand by placing the right product at the right time, right place, you start to really connect the dots between an organization around automatically generating demand, engaging with the market and your customers in a really personalized, dynamic way, and orchestrating how you fulfill supply. Best procurement, best ethical sourcing, most sustainably optimized way, and you're taking effective costs and efficiencies through your supply chain to meet the demand. And now we have enterprise-grade agentic ecosystems that are starting to drive this across the organization. And the only level that comes after that is market level, where you actually then have agents across enterprises engaging across different industries, different organizations, driving market growth in general. So the value curve is exponential as you start to scale up on these agent ecosystems, but the change effort is also increasingly more difficult to get there as well. It comes back to this point of how do we organize differently? What does talent look like alongside these? And these are some of the harder things to get right.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think you nailed it when you said it's kind of the value story keeps extending. And if you're running your business or you're a leader of large teams in any business, the reason you should consider adoption of AI agents is it goes way beyond the first test or pilot use case that you do. So maybe just building on, so we talked about increasing autonomy and kind of the proactivity. Do you think it kind of requires a fundamental rethinking of how buyers of AI agents will structure their own organizations in the future?
Yes and no. So I think some of these things, so we've been on this trend line for the best part of a couple of decades where organizations tend towards decentralization, tend towards breaking out monolithic technology into more modular, composable pieces across an organization. And I think agentic AI and agents continue on this track, but they change it as well. So I'll explain a bit. I think that autonomy is essential with agents. We need to have them embedded into business teams, embedded into business processes at the bleeding edge so that they can operate effectively based on the specific targets of a business function, right? So you cannot centralize the activity of agents. They need to be a part of the business processes. So autonomy is really important when you think about structuring how you deploy. But uniformity is also very key. And this comes back to the point of orchestration, of making sure that there is good cohesion around how you think about deploying these things. So uniformity needs to be applied from a central perspective. And this regards to things like guardrails. It regards to things like how do we set policy to ensure that there's ethics and trust in how these agents work? How do we have strong observability to understand how are these agents actually working together across the organization? And do we have the right level of security in terms of how they're engaging as well? And so I think when we think about the operating model for agentic AI at scale, we have to strike this balance of high autonomy. So there's lots of innovation, lots of activity in the business processes, but strong uniformity as well, so that we have best practice in ethics, best practice in guardrails to make sure that agents are not stepping out of line, best observability if we need to upgrade an agent or replace an agent. You can do so quite easily by keeping a track of your cohort of agents from a central place as well. So those are two things that I think we need to really think about. I think the other thing then, if you just look at a particular business domain, is we're going to start to see a flattening of the structures as well. Talk a lot about this 80-20 inversion equation, right? So if you look at any typical organization today, this is, just a generalization. 80% of people will be doing, 20% will be directing. In the future, we'll see that the other way around. 80% will be directing, 20% will be doing, broadly speaking. And what that means is that you need flatter organizational structures. It means that everybody within an organization will have a different attribute. They also will have agency. We will ask all of our people to be more directors, more leaders, taking control of agents across their workforce. And so that requires for a more flattened structure. We don't need so many managerial hierarchy. And then it will also create a far more connected organization. And so we were speaking earlier about the fact that agents will help to interoperate across the value chain. And so if we think then about the organizational structure of the future, it is a balance of high autonomy, where innovation at the edge is everyone's job with agents in your team, plus strong uniformity. It will be flatter organizational structures with more people directing over doing. And it will be a lot more interconnected businesses, business functions working in more concert as you really drive maximal efficiency for your organization as well.
Let's just break that further down into one specific example. Let's say you and I are peers in an enterprise environment. Right. We have specific functions. And there is an agent kind of that my team curates, and there's an agent that your team curates and manages, and there is a handoff at some point. Is that how you see it, that agents will then start percolating into pyramid structures in future? Or do you see kind of agents that are commonly curated by two different functions within an organization coming together?
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. And I'll caveat, I think we have to see how this plays out. And I think different contexts will have different patterns. But I do see a role for having specialist agents that interact very closely with specialist humans, and they self-reinforce through a human, feedback loop to really create very niche specialist pieces around the application of a piece of work. An example of that might be within life sciences, within R&D, where you might have to have a very specialist, pharmaceutical R&D agent that works very much around a particular knowledge set of work. But I also see it to be true to have multifunction agents that are also available to coordinate work across other agents and people as well. And if you think about life sciences across clinical trials and research and development, you want to then start to engineer up a supply chain and also test and sense demand in the market. So you could have an agent that is essentially a product agent that brings these things together more holistically and starts to think about the dynamics of the specialist agents across an organization. So in general, I agree that I don't think we will see much pyramid structures. I think we will start to see a flattening, and I think that we'll start to see multi-agents working across different functional areas. But I do think we will still have specialist agents as well, positioned in the specialist teams. And maybe this is a pattern that we'll start to see playing out. Maybe as we see organizations continue to evolve, where it's both humans and agents in the loop, that we will see two types of paths: deeply specialist, where agents cohabit with people, lots of innovation, lots of deep specialism, and then really deeply horizontal generalist specialists, if that makes sense, who really understand the end-to-end business, who understand how every single lever of the business interacts with another, and are there to really help to orchestrate. So those might be two career paths in the future: deeply specialist, deeply generalist across the business.
So we talked about flattening of the structure. You talked about the 80-20 pyramid inversion. And then you talked about generalized or orchestrations of agentic value with specialized agents doing very niche tasks. Now let's just shift focus to talking about the humans who are kind of working alongside agents. If we have to plan for change to get humans to start adopting, managing, curating agents, how do you think that would be? What kind of incentivization structures should follow?
Yeah, so I think incentivization it's a very interesting topic, because we are going to have to shift how we are incented at work. One of the things which is breaking as an equation is traditionally we would have thought of value equaling time and effort. And I don't think we can say that that's true. And that's been breaking away, progressively over the best part of the last decade in general, as we continue to just see technology adoption. But with agentic AI, it separates it further still. We cannot continue to incentivize people just based on time and effort. Value is more aligned to essentially how you can deliver velocity of value through your team, and the output that you can deliver based on delivering on value points more as well. And so when we think about incentivizing teams, I think we have to think about how we measure them differently now going forward as well. Maybe measuring more on creative output, measuring more on like how you actually help to continue to improve agents that are part of your team as well. So there's a piece around how do we change how we measure to shift how we incentivize people. But I think the other pieces that are really important here are we need to make sure that we bias for agency in our teams as well. And so there's been a lot of talk recently on social media and X around like intelligence versus agency. And, if you haven't seen it, so like, obviously with the ongoing progress that we see in generative AI and in AI in general, the cost of intelligence is becoming increasingly, less, whereas the value of agency in the workforce is increasingly higher. And so having agency means that you control your own destiny. You are adaptable. You're able to actually use the tools, that are available to you, and you're able to deal with high ambiguity. So I think creating the conditions in the organization for people to have more of an agency mindset would be an important way to drive adoption, because it shifts how people think about what it means to come to work. Yes, we have to be intelligent, but we now have near infinite intelligence on tap. And so we also have to have a lot of agency in how we work. And that creating the conditions for agency will be a big shift. I think the other thing here that we cannot disregard, so the change effort, yes, will be there. We will have to do a lot of push effort to help to create better conditions for change. So everyone can be innovators, can have agency, so that everybody is measured in the right way. But there's also going to be a huge pull effort. We have a new generation coming up. Just like, at least in my generation, when I joined the workforce, I expected to have the internet on my desktop at the time. The new workforce coming up will expect to have agents, will expect to have AI as a productivity necessity alongside them. These people are being educated through high school, through university, knowing how to copilot, how to coexist with AI, working on AI. That will be a basic minimal expectation for anybody coming into the workforce when they're deciding where to go. It's like me deciding, do I choose to go to the place where I have access to the internet or not to do my job? And so I think we're going to have this pull. I think that we're going to see, as more people enter into the workforce coming out of university, that that this will be an expectation rather than a need to force people into it.
So we talked about like shifting from a unit of time based incentives to kind of unit of work or unit of value based incentive structure. How could we possibly enforce that?
There's some basic things that we all need to do well, and it's some housekeeping. Every organization, if you're not in this place already, needs to have very strong clarity on the metrics that you measure success by across your workforce and your teams, and the accountabilities and the roles and responsibilities of people and individuals across teams as well. Because you need that clarity so that we can then also be able to measure how the impact of agents will then be able to be measured once we introduce them into the workforce as well. Without that, you'll just propagate more unclarity in what happens. So I think having strong understanding of metrics, having very strong understanding of roles is very important, and less fuzziness across the organization. I think, if we think about reinforcing incentives and mechanisms on change as well, the things that I've seen that are working really well is to really elevate those that are adopting fast, to really tell the success stories, to talk about how this is actually driving better net gains, not only for the organization. We're seeing a lot of research coming out now that talks about those who are actually piloting with agents enjoy their work more, find it more dynamic, find it more creatively fulfilling because they have more capacity to focus on things, arrive at better answers, and therefore feel better, more fulfilled as well. So those are stories that we need to propagate more to help to continue to shift, the incentive. Where it goes wrong, interestingly, I think is the complete opposite of what I've just been saying. I've seen a couple of examples recently of people putting in an agent into a particular team, single agent, single team, but not changing how you measure the team, not changing the incentives around that team. And what you see is after a few months, once the novelty wears off, the adoption wears off, and they actually stop using the agent. And so I think this is vitally important. Like, we cannot just think that for us to get this right, it's just a question of embedding technology into a team, into an application. It has to also be about shifting how that team is measured, re-engineering the business process to have an element of automation in it if we're going to be successful in actually driving adoption.
Is there one or two key metrics that you would use to manage incentives across your own teams, or you'd recommend customers use that across their teams that are kind of specific around the points you mentioned?
I think it's definitely a shift away from equating time and effort directly to value towards more of this concept of velocity of value. So how fast can you iterate to deliver outcomes in a given team? Whether it is delivering better, more creative, compelling campaigns in marketing, or being able to create better on time in full through a supply chain. Or if you're in engineering of software, the ability to deliver code at a faster rate as well. We need to look at thinking about velocity of value as a better metric of measure across teams. And again, this is not new. I think this has been a digital agile metric for a long time. But I think what we're seeing here is that with agents, this really extrapolates like the need for us to think about it in that way. I think the other thing, and this is a more of a softer metric, is like net creativity, net innovation, right? Like how do we start to think about, and I guess the anti-measure of that is a reduction in repeatability from humans. Like we should be creating these incentives which enforce us to want to push downwards on anything that is undifferentiating, anything that is repeatability, so that there's this automation of that. And the task of us as humans working with agents on that is we need to continue to provide the reinforced learning, the recursive learning feedback into our agentic AI so that it can increasingly adopt automation. And we measure based on reduction in redundant activity. And then we should be measuring capacity of innovation, capacity of creative time. That's a given. And so I think those are probably three interesting metrics: velocity of value, net creativity or innovation, reduction in undifferentiated heavy lifting in a particular task. And I think if you can get those right, you start to create the different dynamic, that agency mindset, to work in a very different way across your organization.
And that sounds like a lot of creative work for humans, Craig. Now I hear all these paranoia stories, humans going out of job. We talk about, we all know the word technical debt. We know process debt. But if not done right, there will be an agentic debt 100%. If not incentivized correctly.
Yeah.
So
there's a thing here, I use the word creativity probably very loosely. You can think of this in many different forms. So let's look at contact centers, right? There's probably not much room to have creative agency in a contact center role, but there's plenty of room to have trusted, established human relationships. And so in this instance, if we think about those metrics for incentivization, we want velocity of value. We want to talk meaningfully, with as many customers as possible. And I say meaningfully because it's not just about volume of how many people you can talk to. It's meaningful conversations in the contact center and engaging with them in the right way. We want to remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting, which is often understanding as quickly as possible why a customer is calling in and placing them in the hands of the right service line or getting them to the right service. And so a lot of that can be automated with agents. But you want to increase the capacity, what I was calling creativity, let's call trust, trusted conversation. And what we're seeing, again, so another piece of research here that's coming out as we see agents more into contact centers, is those contact centers that are doing better are the ones that not just fully automate, but the ones that ensure that there is still trusted conversation from human to human. And that's creating a better satisfaction score for customers. So full automation, at least where we're at now in society, tends to have less trust from customers, whereas a good blend of automation with agents plus good customer human care maximizes trust. So come back to these metrics: velocity of value, as many meaningful conversations, undifferentiated lifting handled by the agents, capacity to innovate, capacity to have really meaningful conversations human to human with the customer. I think that's a good dimension to strive for.
Interesting. And so these are clear areas of upskilling, new learning also for all the human employees to get into. Let's say somebody is doing more of back office automation roles in the past. This particular shift is an opportunity for them to go and interact, find more frontline roles while curating their expertise into agents that will continue to do the back office automations that they are known by. But clearly they can add more in their armory of skills now. So it kind of frees up time away from all the drudgery, if I could use that word.
100%. And you can apply that into near on any role, I think, across an organization. Whether I'm sitting in a procurement function, handling many different vendor contracts that I'm bringing into an organization, a lot of that can be automated. It means I have more time to be selective in finding the best partners for my business, in striking up the best meaningful relationships so I can ethically source the best goods for the best products to create in my organization, right? If I'm in insurance and I want to be able to detect fraud more readily, I can free up my time as a fraud agent by co-piloting with a fraud AI agent. I have more time to deal with making sure that I completely eliminate false negatives where fraud might be detected, to make sure that I maintain good customer satisfaction whilst also optimizing for the cost of fraud. So this, and the examples can go on and on depending on whatever organization you look at. The capacity to have innovation, and you can apply innovation in many different dimensions, is there in your job. It just means that you can focus on the things that are more critical to creating more long-term value.
And do you think employees who kind of adopt this mindset in the future, where we talked about agency, but it's also about expanding their perspectives beyond what they are so used to, and trying to connect it to the wider vision, would they be kind of the preferred traits of an employee set that organizations will look up to? So if we take agents out for a minute, what are the key traits in a human that you would evaluate to bring in your organizations in future?
Yeah, so I think yes, what you just mentioned, I think is a critical thing, and it connects to agency, because agency is the ability to deal with, abstracted, uncertain problems, and to be able to look at the bigger picture as well. And so I think, this is going to be one of the big benefits with automation through agents, having the capacity to actually understand what are the impacts, the wider impacts of my role across the organization. In fact, it will be necessary because we should see a lot more orchestration of activity across roles. So you will have to be more considerate of the bigger picture. I think that will be a key attribute. I think continuous adaptability, self-reflection, and learning will be really important, because I think we can all agree the time horizon for any of this is 2-3 years out, and we don't really know where it goes from there. So we all need to be able to have continuous adaptability, learning as we continue to see AI continuing to grow alongside us. We spoke about the need for innovation and thinking differently. I think that's important. Continuous learning is another obvious one. We want everybody, there's the good old cliche, AI won't take your job. It's the person who knows AI that will take your job. And so I think those are all important points. I would say the other thing is critical thinking as well. We cannot afford to become lazy just because we think a lot of the work is being done by agents along our side. We still need to create critical thinking. We still need to, inspect and understand the outcomes of what automation brings to us. And then the other side to that is we have to have strong ethical and moral, like North Stars in everybody we employ as well. I think we need to be able to have people who are genuinely focused on what is the right thing for our customers, for the society in which a business operates in, and make sure that we are optimizing for our agents to do the same as well.
Should I just try to get in, explore where value is today and how value will be delivered without adding this as a self-imposed constraint in the short term?
Yeah. This is an interesting question, I think. And so, we all know that, I think we all know that the pattern right now, at least when it comes to the foundation model layer, is that no organization should index on a single foundation model behind agentic AI, because there's just too much continued disruption in the market. There's too much pace. It's too nascent. So at least at a foundation model layer, my recommendation is definitely invest in choice and optionality rather than constraining yourself to a single model. What we're seeing now is that a mixture of expert models is probably the best way, where you can have better reasoning and self-improvement if you look at actually having a multi-model approach. So I would definitely index on creating modularity around model choice, so that you can plug and play in. The good old analogy of build the car, not the engine, and then just keep upgrading the engine as you go. Mm-hmm. I think that's a clear path. And then I think as you think about how you choose to host and scale the technical infrastructure, you probably at this point in time want to invest in a single cloud vendor rather than multiple, because the skill sets around it will be easier to adopt and apply into, rather than splitting or forking out your skill sets and capabilities. But then I think you want to have and curate a healthy ecosystem across the wrapper or the application layer. And I think that is where we're seeing most of the innovation happening within startups, right? And I think that is the area for you to test and learn with innovation more broadly, to understand businesses like HumBot that can actually help particular niche areas around being able to automatically deploy a stack on cloud. That area of the market is still very nascent, very turbulent. And so I would encourage more open innovation ecosystems there. And so essentially, if you think about that as a diagram, you're increasingly biasing for flexibility at the top-end wrapper or application stack level. You're really looking at modularity and choice and flexibility at the foundational model level. And then at the infrastructure level, you're looking at a single play.
Interesting. And what I found really interesting is how you kind of broke the choice of technical tools by layers, rather than thinking of it as one holistic agent, which is like a black box, because those are also options that are out in where agentic providers will cover for your infrastructure needs, your orchestration needs, your app front-end application needs, all in one wrapper, right? And then whether that's a best decision for an enterprise that's kind of already diversified across layers, is a question that comes to mind.
This is why I think context really matters in this. And the reason why it's challenging to give you a single answer here is because we're talking about a foundational technology which touches everything. So, I mean, what do I mean by that a bit more? So like you might have an organization that has heavily invested in a particular ERP, let's say SAP, over the last 10 years. A lot of the automation across their business processes is run on an SAP. Should you then choose to then co-invest in the agents that SAP is building out across their stack as a first step? Because there's less friction, it's an easier adoption path, possibly. Whereas if you are a business that has more fragmentation in your technical infrastructure and your partners, then I think my first answer would probably be the better choice to go for. So I think context matters around where you're beginning as well. It also matters around where you want to go to, right? So like, where is your North Star for this? I think we should all be thinking very deeply about how will AI agents change the nature of our business, not just from a technical perspective, but from a business model and how we generate revenue as a business, and use that also as a decision point to understand how do we choose to invest in the partner ecosystem around us, and how are we changing how we're structuring, where we might have invested in technology in the past as well.
Yeah. And I think taking context into consideration is key also for the human change aspect.
Yeah.
We have experts in the current organization versed with specific technologies, could be SAP, could be any cloud, having adjacent agents connected to them, as opposed to recommending a full replacement is a rehaul or a risk that you may or may not want to take.
I think some of the big features that anyone needs to bias for in thinking about this is high interoperability. So we cannot paint ourselves into a corner where we have agents that do not talk well with other agents across an enterprise or a market ecosystem. So high interoperability is key. High transparency and observability, so that you can understand where work is happening, how it is being orchestrated. Ensuring that there's uniformity in how you think about guardrails and security and ethics, right? Yeah. We spoke about autonomy already, in ensuring that agents can really integrate into the applications, that they are given clear metrics, accountability, and access, right? Because there is a risk that an agent can have too much access as well. And so I think that those are all features of this as a business ecosystem that we need to think about.
Correct. And something I also took away from you is the role of partnerships that you mentioned at the end. So if I'm considering a specific provider of the agentic stack, no matter the layer, I would look at how do they think of their own partnerships within the technology play. Are they ready to build on top of existing infrastructure plays?
Yeah.
Are they ready to align seamlessly with our existing investments? And so I think assessing the vision of any provider of agentic technology from a partnerships lens would potentially be key to kind of de-risk our success, because we could be assured that they'll continue to integrate with newer stacks or existing stacks seamlessly without requiring us to disrupt.
I think that's going to be really important because we're trying to balance off two things here. The one is, to really start to scale agentic AI, you have to focus on a business priority area and start with a focus area, test and learn, and scale outwardly. But we also have to think about the whole re-architecture of our organizations. So we want to start with focus so that we can prove out scale, but we also want to make sure that we are re-architecting so that we can hit the momentum of scale at the right point as well. And the risk with the re-architecting across the organization is we build the legacy of the future. And we start to hobble our own gains because we've made the wrong choices in either becoming too close to a single partner or not creating enough modularity and flexibility, enough interoperability across what we're doing as well. And that stands for both the technology as well as how we think about the organizational design.
Those who are kind of evaluating agentic products or considering adoption of agentic products in their organization and planning for change, there are some clear mental models that have come across of this. So maybe going towards the end now, if you were to extrapolate 3 to 5 years from now, where do you see a future of, say, a mid-tier business or even a large enterprise in terms of their working relationship with agentic products?
Yeah, so I would hazard to guess 5 years out with the time frames that we're dealing with on AI. So maybe 3. And I think, I think that this summarizes quite a bit of our discussion right now. I think we look out in 3 years' time And we see an organization, firstly, which is not a net zero game, it's a positive sum game, which has so much more potential, that has so much more growth opportunities because the capacity has 10x, 100x across what they can do from a productivity standpoint, from an addressing of a customer standpoint, from how they can partner in the market standpoint. It's an organization that has a talent base that is entrepreneurial, that is dynamic, that has all of the attributes of agency we spoke about before. It's an organization that's flatter, that's adaptive, that's faster paced, that's focused on value really quickly. It's also an organization that has deep transparency as well, because the metrics in which to operate by have had to become very clearer. And therefore, the transparency into the market on its performance is a lot clearer as well. And it's an organization where there's deep collaboration, of course, with agents, right? So I think that, I'm hugely excited by this. We're going to see huge growth, huge opportunity. It's not a zero-sum game for any organization. I think we're going to see exponential gains across all industries as we start to see this taken up. And I think that we're going to start to see, a very different positioning around our relationship with technology in general in society as well, which will mean for healthier lifestyles, better balance as well, better work.
All of us need that, don't we? A better work-life balance. Maybe, just closing off with the last question around just continuing with the 3-year theme. What I also sense captured from your conversation is, besides having the best balance for us as humans, in 3 years' time, we would potentially look back and say, we achieved a lot more in the last 3 years by delegating part of our mundane drudgery off to agents and explored newer pastures. And I hope that's a very, very fulfilling journey for all of us.
I mean, everybody uses the analogy of going back to this as being, and the next industrial revolution. And fundamentally it is. But if you think about that, this is a crude analogy, but we are probably all manually plowing our fields right now. And in 3 years' time, we'll all be driving the most automated combine harvester you can imagine, in air conditioning, listening to the music of your choice. So I think the future is bright. I think that our work will be a lot more meaningful and enjoyable, and a lot less effort will be taken out to help us to focus on the things that matter.
That's great, Craig. And we always close off with a call to action for listeners. Could be anything, simple, tactical, or something strategic, but just as a takeaway from this conversation. Now, if I were an owner of a business or a team leader considering adoption of agents and thinking on lines of enterprise design, as we talked about through this conversation, what would be 1 or 2 call to actions that you would offer as a food for thought for listeners?
So my first would be, look at your business. Where are the greatest areas of inefficiency, the greatest opportunities for undifferentiated work to be removed? And that can be both in your back office, it could be in your front end part of your business, it could be in how you deliver software, it could be anywhere. But be business-led, identify where the pockets of opportunity lie, and focus on there to start to embed firstly with agentic AI. Figure out those areas firstly as areas to prove out how to start to apply and adopt. Measure that, scale that over time, gather the learning. So I think that's the first thing. That's the go deep and focused part. The second part I would suggest is start now to shift the fabric of your culture. Start to create the agenda, and this comes from leadership on, we want everybody in this organization to have agency. We want everyone to think differently about their work. We expect people to explore, to grab these tools, make these tools available for people to start to experiment with broadly, so that you're starting to shift that culture. And over time, those 2 vectors will intersect, because as you continue to scale the adoption of agentic AI based on business priorities through your organization, you'll require the culture of your organization to keep pace and meet and continue to drive further forward. So those are the 2 areas I would encourage any leader to look at.
And this has been a great takeaway for any leader, in my view, because there's so much going on in terms of narrative around technical products, technical execution. But what often gets unnoticed or even unthought or not planned for is really this long-term play.
Right.
And kind of what kind of change is it on the human side, on the enterprise incentives designing side, and then last but not least, most importantly, the culture side.
Yeah.
Because we are planning for the future to coexist, not to replace.
We are firmly out of the prototyping and POC field.
Excellent.
And I think that's very clear. We see it with every organization in every industry. It's now about transformation at scale. And so this is a serious thing to think about more broadly. And so that requires rethinking a lot around how we think as an organization. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to close. Transformation at scale is what we all need to plan towards. And Craig, it was phenomenal to have you in HumBot Podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And I hope to do more of these in future.
Anytime, man.
Yeah.
All right. Good to
All
speak.
right.